After e4, e5, knight f3, knight c6, and bishop to b5, black plays f5. In previous videos we went through d3. In this video we're going to go through d4 immediately. What to do now? We take the pawn in e4 with an attack on the knight, and the knight takes the pawn in e5, equalizing the material, and also just placing the knight into what seems to be a desirable square. The knight is protected by a central pawn, so that was actually a really good way to start for the white player. Also, there's double pressure over the knight in c6, and the white player is threatening this very strong move, queen to h5, which should be putting the white player in a very desirable situation. So that's why we take that knight. And after pawn takes back, black plays c6 with an attack on the bishop. The bishop can't go to a4, or either way, because you're just gonna play queen a5. See, bishop to c4, let's say. Well, okay, queen a5 doesn't really take the bishop, of course, because knight c3, but you are attacking the pawn in e5 and defending the pawn in e4. Plus, you're also defending the square h5 from the attack of the queen. So let's look at this variation. After c6, white playing bishop to c4 or bishop to e2. Let's start with bishop to e2. Okay, queen a5 check. And after knight to c3 developing, queen wins the pawn in e5. And after castling, black plays d5. It's got this amazing center and nothing to worry. There is no compensation for the extra pawn. And so black is simply up a central pawn. Has got an amazing center. A move like f3 seems to be challenging this very strong center. It doesn't help because of bishop to d6, threatening to reach the square h2 with a decisive advantage. A move like g3 here will be very stupid because of bishop h3, threatening to win the exchange. f4 now, and black will play queen to e7, saving the queen, but position is evaluated around -4 at the moment. You're going to win the exchange unless white plays rook to e1, but then bishop c5 check, and after the king moves, simply knight f6. White can't move a thing without losing it. That's the funny thing. Black has a plan of playing h5, h4, and if white wants to challenge our incredible bishop in c5, it's not going to work because he can play bishop to f2, trapping the rook. Either way, that move could have come up to you. This is how it goes pretty much in this position, right? So f3, bishop to d6. This is how it usually goes. So if they play g3, you do this move, rook e1. Earlier we went through f4. Now what happens after rook e1? It's basically the same thing. Check, king moves, and now bishop f2. Best move by white is to take the pawn in e4, but it just doesn't help. Take the rook, queen takes back, and now d4. The game has become a joke now. You're going to be able to take this pawn with a completely winning position. And even here you might be arguing after the move bishop to d6, white didn't have to play this weakening g3 move, but could have played f4 right away. This looks better. Okay, still, queen e7, you know the pattern. And after the best move, which is bishop to g4, we take the bishop, queen takes back. Where is our advantage now? Simple development. Knight to f6, attacking the queen. Best move will be queen to e2. Black has a winning advantage after castling especially. We have retained our extra pawn. Position is evaluated around -4. White's best move here will be bishop to e3. However, this doesn't stop the bishop from going to this amazing square and simplify the game. So let's start from the beginning so we can go to another line. Knight f3, knight c6, bishop e5, f5. We're looking at d4 in this game. Okay, we take in e4, and after white takes in e5, we take the knight as well. Pawn takes back, and now c6 attacking the bishop. What happens after bishop to c4? Well, this goes on obviously the same way. Queen e5 check, knight to c3, and now we take the pawn. And after castling, we go on with d5, and now bishop to e2. This is literally a transposition into what happened before. Black goes on with his moves, bishop to d6, and it's basically like before, except bishop c4 gave the black player an extra tempo, which means we can go for this attack immediately. g3 here, you might argue, is not as weak as before when there was a pawn in f3, meaning that this pawn in g3 only had the support of one pawn. However, black now plays knight to f6, and after bishop to e3, it looks like maybe this game could go differently, especially if white gets to play bishop d4, maybe queen d4. Let's see what happens. Black goes on with bishop to h3, attacking the rook as we saw before. And if white plays queen to d4 now, looking for swaps, and this is really stupid, of course, because you can just take the queen, simplify, and you're winning the exchange. Winning the exchange here leads you to a winning endgame. Yes, white has the bishop pair, but you have an extra pawn and the exchange, so you're better. If white plays instead bishop to d4 with an attack on the queen, we have to give priority to that, but now queen to f5, we save the queen, we're still attacking the exchange. but after rook to e1 and castle, black is out of any possible trouble. And not only that, black has this tremendous bishop attacking the squares near the king. This bishop is also good. The queen and the rook are on the same file attacking the f file. The knight is ready to jump into the game. Position is evaluated almost -4, so you can imagine how, even if we are only up a pawn, our position and the weaknesses of our opponent are so wrong that black is going to win this game easily. After white's best move, which is queen to d2, black goes on with knight to d7. The idea obviously is to play c5, and the bishop will be trapped after bishop e3. You can play d4. Plenty of options. You also have rook a to e8. Best move actually in this position. You're winning no matter what. So from the start, let's look at the different variation. Knight f3, knight c6, bishop e5, f5, and d4. So we take this pawn. What happens if instead of knight takes pawn, now white first takes our knight, and if we take the knight in f3, then white will take us back with the bishop with the normal position, equal position. Now here we take with the d pawn in order to open the queen, and after the knight takes in e5. So this move was going to happen anyway, of course, but with a different tempo. Now here knight f6, so it's important to stop queen h5 from coming because it's a really strong attack. Now two options we're going to look at. One of them is queen to e2, putting pressure on the pawn, because you also want to play knight c3, and a castle right away. So let's look at queen e2 first of all. This is stupid because queen d4 simply, and we're taking the pawn. It's a free pawn, there's no compensation. We're attacking the knight. White will have to waste another tempo to save the knight. Bishop to f4 to defend the knight doesn't work because you're targeting b2. It looks a bit dangerous actually, but it's really not. Queen takes b2, and after castling, white is giving up a rook, but he has incredible development, that has to be said. But there's basically nothing, just absolutely nothing here. Position is evaluated almost -6. White player cannot trap our queen in any possible way. Knight c3 will be the usual move here to stop the queen from taking the pawn in a2, but knight c3 is not accessible. Okay, so earlier we noticed how the queen cannot stop defending the pawn in d4. So what happens after the very normal looking move castle? Black plays c5. This is what we wanted to do. Removing all white's pawns from the center, or at least isolating them. So this pawn cannot really be defended, let's say c3, because after all the swaps, white will have an isolated pawn. You could target it later on. So what happens after bishop to e3? At this point, the white player just tried to get some development. Take. And after take, black continues with bishop to e6. We're just going to simplify because we have the bishop pair, and opening the game is just better for black. After knight to c3, let's see how to continue now. Castle long side. And now best move will be rook a to d1. What happens if white takes the pawn in a7? Simply bishop to d6, attacking the knight. The knight will have to go away. Well, basically there's nowhere to go for the knight. The knight is trapped. So after f4, we take the pawn en passant, and after the knight takes in f3, b6. This is the best way to continue. This traps the bishop. The reason is simple. A move like knight to b5 is never going to help because a bishop check, and also you go bishop c4, making a fork to the rook and the knight. Also, just kick the knight away. The king in b7 will trap the bishop no matter what. So obviously that move was not possible. Let's look at rook a to d1. Black continues with bishop to d6. And two options here. f4 once again, because the white player really needs to get rid of this incredible pawn. And a move like rook to e1, putting double attack on the pawn, just doesn't work because of pawn to c5, bishop to e3, and you're going to be able to win the knight. So c5 is a threat. You're threatening to attack the bishop and then win the knight. So that's why white will have to play something like f4 to protect the knight, or knight to b5 to maybe counter attack this annoying bishop. Let's look at this. Knight to b5. Okay, we take the knight. Bishop takes back. It's a bit surprising, but still black now plays bishop to c4, and now you get the point. There's no compensation here. There's nothing here for white. Well, white taking the pawn in c7 with the knight. Just take the bishop. You're winning. If white checks you by going to a7, simply play king b8. The knight is trapped. The knight can't go anywhere. If rook f to e1, removing the rook from the attack of the bishop, then you're up material. Bishop to b5, no compensation. In this position, what happens after f4? Again, take en passant, knight f3. If rook f3, again, you have this tactic. Never forget c5. The bishop moves and then you win the knight. So white will have to take with the knight, at which point bishop to f5. threatening c2. That's why black is winning this game. It's just so, everything is so well placed. Two options we're going to look at, and then we're going to close this video. One of them being knight e1 to defend the pawn, or rook to d2. Rook to d2 looks very natural because you're going to double up the rooks, but then rook h to e8, and now a move like knight to b5 looks like it can finally happen, but then bishop to f4, and we're going to be able to win material. If the rook moves away while still defending the c2 pawn, then simply knight g4 should do. So in this position, what happens after an attempt of swapping, then we're cool with that because black's pieces are placed better. We got a bishop pair as well, rook takes, knight takes, and now bishop to f4 attacking the rook. The rook has to move whatever the rook moves. Well, the rook will have to keep defending the bishop, so the rook can't really go anywhere else because then we will take the bishop. Rook d1, but then you can still take the bishop because rook takes back and then bishop e3. In this position, we went through rook to e2 and everything that happens next. What happens after the immediate knight e1? It's just not going to help because bishop to e6 now, since the bishop was being attacked by the rook. And there's nothing here really that works here. Black will go on to winning endgame thanks to the bishop pair. A move like bishop to f6, the idea of smashing our pawn structure and giving us an isolated pawn, looks interesting, but still bishop c5 check, king moves, and now rook takes. Here there is no Zwischenzug by playing bishop takes pawn, also because it looks really dangerous considering that we've given away. So this is just a crazy line because now we gave a knight, yeah, we took the rook, but then the best move here is rook to e1, which is crazy. The thing is that now white can take our pawn and we have rook and two bishops against rook, a bishop and two knights. However, bishop to c4 should end the game because the rook can't move anywhere. If rook goes to g1, you can just take it. If the rook moves away, then you've got checkmate. So this should do the job. And also rook f8 is not possible because of the bishop. In this position, after the knight takes back, black still doesn't recapture the bishop, but rather plays rook to f8 with a stronger threat. So the bishop is pinned. And here nothing really works. Let's say knight to d3 with an attack on the bishop. Black plays bishop to d4. And after c3 attacking the bishop, you just take back on e7. You're keeping the bishop pair. It's going to be two bishops against two knights. Black should be happy. And in this position, we went through knight d3. What happens after b3, stopping us from taking the pawn in e2, for example. Then simply bishop to e7. That will attack on the bishop. And after knight to e3, we can take the bishop. Nothing really changes. Knight to d3. See, the white player, unlike before, is doing some attempt of progressing with the knight, but the squares we attack with the bishop pairs are just too many. These knights are not going anywhere. Black plays rook to e8 and goes on to a better endgame. Position evaluated around -2. This was white playing the absolutely best moves in this specific opening, and here there's nothing. After the best moves, knight to f5 and bishop to d7, knight to c5, trying to take a bishop pair. It's not possible because bishop f5 remains a threat. And if rook takes, then you've got checkmate. So if white plays h3, just to get rid of that problem, black will be in time to play rook to e2. And we're going to close the line here, as this should be more than enough.